The story begins with a shattered father who has completely lost his voice, trapped in a strange, suffocating silence. He decides to weaponize this quiet isolation, transforming himself into a cold-blooded killing machine to quench the burning rage inside him. He eagerly counts down the days to Christmas Eve, waiting to launch a blood-soaked fireworks display and destroy the men who destroyed his soul. The first step of his master plan unfolds at the local police station. Playing the part of a helpless, grieving victim, he goes in to check on the progress of his son's murder case. While waiting in Detective Dennis's office, his eyes drift to the wall behind the desk, which is heavily plastered with mugshots of notorious gang members. Scanning the photos, he makes a chilling discovery. The key players responsible for his son's death are right there on the board. Wasting no time, he pulls out his phone and snaps pictures of all their files, gathering the intel he needs. He then pauses in front of a police sketch of a bald man. Staring intently at the drawing, he recognizes him. This is Playa, the ruthless gang leader who shot him and nearly ended his life. Just as Detective Dennis walks into the office, Brian gets up to leave. They lock eyes, and the detective immediately senses a dark, deeply rooted seed of hatred brewing inside Brian. Returning home, Brian transforms his wall into a hit list, pinning up the photos of every single person involved in his son's murder. He maps out a meticulous plan to slaughter them all on Christmas Eve, the exact one-year anniversary of his son's tragic death. From this moment, the true path of vengeance begins. Channeling his agonizing pain into raw power, he subjects himself to a grueling, punishing workout regimen to forge an unstoppable muscular physique. He trains relentlessly, learning professional hand-to-hand combat to paralyze and neutralize anyone who stands in his way. Though he struggles with even the simplest exercises at first, he soon evolves into an absolute beast, pushing massive weights and mastering combat techniques without flinching. Next, he buys a beat-up, rusty old car. As the broken windshield wipers scrape the thick layer of dust off the glass, it symbolizes his own shifting mindset. His vision is finally clear, and his deadly objectives are locked in. The second he gets the car home, he begins heavily modifying it, reinforcing the frame with solid steel. Day after day, the relentless pounding of his hammer echoes through the garage. His wife watches him closely. She knows exactly what he is preparing for, but she is completely powerless to stop him. Brian soon realizes that brute strength isn't going to be enough. This evil won't be eradicated unless he learns how to shoot with lethal precision. His first time at the firing range is a disaster, his aim completely off. Realizing he needs to master the craft, he sits down and intensely studies the mechanics of different firearms, analyzing every single part of the weapons. Amidst this dark obsession, his wife finally hits her breaking point and emotionally collapses. One night, the two sit together, holding each other tight, sharing a heartbreaking, silent embrace without uttering a single word. In that quiet moment, Brian understands that she has made the painful decision to leave him. It isn't because she stopped loving him, but because the heavy trauma requires them to find some distance. We see her wiping away her tears, grabbing her suitcase and walking out the door. Her departure actually clears Brian's mind, allowing him to focus entirely on his bloody mission with nothing left to lose and nothing tying him down. The story then flashes back, revealing the vibrant, happy family that used to be. It's Christmas Eve, and they're joyfully celebrating in their front yard. Suddenly, the festive atmosphere is shattered by the deafening sound of gunfire and screeching tires. A violent turf war has just erupted between two rival gangs, and stray bullets begin tearing through the neighborhood. Brian and his wife dive in, desperately trying to shield their little boy with their own bodies. But as the gang members speed off, the parents make a soul-crushing discovery. Their son's tiny clothes are completely soaked in blood. Blinded by pure, unadulterated rage, Brian sprints after the shooters, completely reckless and desperate to tear them apart. He follows the echoing sound of the gunfire, tracking them down while they are still fiercely shooting at each other. He spots a green car trying to flee the scene, refusing to let them escape, Brian grabs a heavy iron crowbar from a nearby trash pile and grips it tightly. Just as the car speeds out of the alleyway, he swings the metal bar with everything he has, smashing the vehicle and causing the driver to lose control. But the strike isn't enough to stop them. The car wildly spins around and turns the tables, hunting Brian down through the narrow alleys. The vehicle slams into him, violently throwing him to the hard pavement. A gang member steps out of the car, gripping a handgun. Without hesitation, he shoots Brian in the side. This cold-blooded shooter is Playa, the very gang leader who just destroyed Brian's entire world. But Playa isn't finished. With terrifying calmness, he raises his weapon a second time and fires another bullet directly into Brian's neck, leaving him to bleed out before casually walking away. The scene cuts to a hospital room. Detective Dentist arrives to check if Brian has survived the brutal attack, leaving his police badge behind before walking out. Ever since Brian was admitted, a beautiful parrot has shown up every single day at his window. It's as if the innocent spirit of his murdered son is living inside the bird, watching over his father and praying for his recovery. His wife stays by his side, caring him deeply, and the parrot remains faithfully perched at the glass until Brian finally regains consciousness. The gruelingly painful physical therapy begins, but Brian receives devastating news. The bullet to his neck severely damaged his vocal cords, stripping away his ability to speak forever. The psychological torture is unbearable. He desperately wants to scream, to unleash the roaring agony inside his soul, but absolutely no sound escapes his lips. When he finally returns home, the ghosts of Christmas Day violently flood his mind, forcing him to relive every agonizing second of the tragedy. His wife holds him tightly, desperately trying to comfort him. Out in the yard, his son's favorite ball sits exactly where it was left. Inside, the house remains frozen in time. Even the Christmas presents the little boy never got to open are still waiting in their spots. The grief eats away at Brian's heart, and he is completely unable to hold back his sorrow. Clutching a local newspaper, Brian reads the horrific details of his son's death. He discovers that his boy's life was stolen over a petty, meaningless gang dispute over territory, a tragic victim of a stray bullet he had nothing to do with. This realization flips a switch inside Brian, driving his thirst for vengeance to the brink of insanity. He walks over to the fridge, grabs a bottle of liquor, and starts drinking furiously, trying to drown the agonizing reality of his existence. His wife stands quietly in the background, watching him self-destruct in utter silence. But her resilient facade eventually crumbles. No mother can endure the lifelong torment of losing her child, and she completely breaks down. Brian isolates himself in the dark basement, completely drowning in booze and depression. But one fateful day, amidst his drunken haze, a memory of his son flashes before his eyes. He makes a silent vow. He will not spend the rest of his life rotting away like this. Right then and there, the dark seed of his revenge begins to rapidly grow. Time flies by, and we reach October. With only 2 months left until his Christmas deadline, Brian spends his nights wide awake, meticulously gathering hard evidence on the gang's criminal empire. He realizes that his targets aren't just 2 or 3 thugs. He is gearing up to annihilate both rival gangs entirely. He attempts to stalk Playa, trying to photograph his every move, but the elusive gang leader quickly vanishes from his sight. However, during his surveillance, he spots a man named Anthony carrying a suspicious suitcase out of a building and getting into his car. Thanksgiving arrives and Brian kicks his intense training into overdrive. His physical transformation is complete. The frail, broken man is dead, replaced by a hardened warrior. The mugshots plastered on his basement walls serve as his ultimate fuel, pushing him to endure the pain and grow stronger. He takes his modified car out, practicing high-speed driving and mastering complex, dangerous drifting techniques to prepare for the ultimate vehicular warfare. After months of relentless dedication, Brian executes the most difficult driving maneuvers with absolute, flawless precision. His firearms training is also paid off. Every single shot he fires now strikes dead center. Every bullet that shreds through his paper targets amplifies his rage and solidifies his bloody resolve. It's the ultimate payoff for his months of agonizing preparation. He knows that 0 hour is rapidly approaching. The time for judgment is finally here. Late one night, under the cover of darkness, Brian slips out of a window and silently breaks into Anthony's home. Hearing a strange noise, Anthony steps out to investigate, only to be brutally ambushed by Brian. Brian delivers a savage, merciless beatdown, pummeling Anthony until he completely blacks out and tumbles down the stairs. The scene shifts back to Brian's shadowy basement. Anthony wakes up securely bound, hanging upside down by his ankles. Brian, refusing to show his face, wears a heavy welding mask and unleashes a terrifying interrogation. When Anthony spots the massive wall covered in surveillance photos and detailed intel on his gang, he instantly knows he is doomed. Yet he is dying to know the identity of his masked tormentor. Brian shoves a printed sheet of questions into Anthony's face, forcing him to spill the gang's darkest secrets, detailing their crimes and complex money laundering operations. When Anthony arrogantly tries to resist and argue, Brian pulls out a hunting knife, the silent threat hanging in the air. Terrified, Anthony is losing his mind. To prove he isn't playing games, Brian violently slams the blade deep into the table in front of him. Just as Anthony seems to surrender to his grim fate, he desperately breaks free, snatches the knife, and brutally plunges it into Brian's body. The sudden counterattack catches Brian completely off guard, and before he can react, he takes a second deep, agonizing stab wound to his leg. This violent struggle exposes a harsh reality. This is Brian's first true combat to the death, and his actual fighting experience is still raw. But fueled by pure adrenaline and sheer willpower, Brian miraculously regains the upper hand, unleashing an absolute massacre of a beatdown on Anthony. The clock ticks down and December 24th finally arrives, the exact date Brian circled on his calendar to wipe this criminal empire off the map. Armed to the teeth and fully geared up, he pauses, realizing this might be the very last day he ever breathes. He actively avoids seeing his wife one last time, heavily burdened by guilt, or perhaps unable to face the raw pain of their shared tragedy. It's as if carrying out this bloodbath is the only way to extinguish the raging fire burning inside both of them. Brian picks up the untouched Christmas present intended for his son and slowly makes his way to the cemetery. He sits by the grave in heavy, lingering silence. Gently touching the cold tombstone, his heart screams with all the things he wishes he could tell his little boy, but the deafening silence and crippling grief hold him captive. As soon as the sun sets, Brian drags a battered Anthony and dumps him right on Detective Dennis's front lawn, leaving a mysterious red bag and a sealed envelope beside him. Moments later, the police arrive to take Anthony into custody. The detective carefully opens the envelope, realizing it's a personalized gift from Brian. The message is crystal clear. Everything ends tonight. Dennis is initially confused until he plugs the included USB flash drive into his computer. He is absolutely blown away by the contents. Brian has handed him the motherlode, every single crime committed by Playa's syndicate, meticulously gathered over the past year. Brian left no stone unturned, mapping out the gang's hierarchy, their secret safe houses, precise drug delivery schedules, and even Anthony's forced confessions. Every piece of the puzzle is perfectly laid out. As Brian gears up to raid Playa's stronghold, his police scanner intercepts a call about an armed robbery going down nearby. He decides to crash the party. Pulling up to the scene, he spots the heavily armed, massively built gang members. Knowing a head-on gunfight is suicide, he waits patiently in the shadows for them to finish the heist. The second they step out into the street, Brian floors the gas pedal, violently ramming his reinforced car directly into two of them. This sparks an absolutely insane high-speed chase. Brian drives like a maniac, aggressively drifting to shake off a thug who manages to cling to his roof. After a brief, intense exchange of gunfire, fresh blood drips down from the roof of Brian's car. The adrenaline crash hits him hard. His hands shake, and his breathing is heavy. The psychological weight of taking his first human life momentarily shakes his soul. Not long after, Brian throws a duffel bag directly into Playa's luxurious headquarters. When one of the henchmen brings the bag to Playa, he unzips it to find a horrifying message: 2 of Anthony's severed fingers. Knowing that Anthony controls the gang's entire financial network, Playa loses his mind. Assuming the rival Ruiz gang is responsible for the mutilation, he immediately orders his soldiers to launch an all-out retaliatory strike. This is exactly the chaotic gang war Brian masterminded. A massive, explosive street war erupts between the two factions. Brian lurks in the perimeter, patiently watching the carnage unfold and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Suddenly, he spots a female police officer pinned down in the brutal crossfire, heavily wounded. Deciding to intervene, he whips his car around her in tight circles, using his reinforced vehicle as a moving shield while gunning down any thug who dares to approach her. Amidst the chaos, a gang member live streams the insane vehicular warfare, sending the feed directly to Playa. Watching the footage of Brian's flawless drifting and his own men dropping like flies, Playa realizes a terrifying, unstoppable force is coming for him. After clearing the immediate area, Brian stops to let the wounded officer inside. But tragedy strikes instantly. The moment she gets into the passenger seat, a fatal bullet strikes her in the back. Brian hits the gas to escape the kill zone, only to realize she is already bled out. Knowing his mission is far from over, he pulls over and gently lays her lifeless body on the side of the road. Back behind the wheel, he speeds toward the thug who was live streaming the fight, brutally runs him over, snatches the phone, and executes him. He then uses the phone to send the execution video directly to Playa. This psychological warfare shatters Playa's nerves. He finally understands exactly who is hunting him. In a desperate bid to survive, Playa drops a $5,000 bounty into the gang's group chat for anyone who can kill Brian. Navigating through the war zone, suddenly Brian spots Ruiz. Instead of opening fire, he speeds right past him, deliberately provoking the rival boss to give chase. Brian drives to an overpass and brings his car to a slow stop. Pulling out his son's small musical toy, his only connection to his murdered boy, he gently kisses it. It's a silent, unbreakable vow that he will avenge his death. As Ruiz's vehicle closes in, Brian slams the gas pedal to the floor. Suddenly, out of nowhere, another car violently T-bones Brian's vehicle. Ruiz steps out, walking straight into his own doom, and a terrifying close-quarters chase kicks off. Meanwhile, Detective Dennis listens to the police radio, hearing the reports of the two gangs slaughtering each other. He instantly pieces the puzzle together. Brian is the puppet master. Digging through Brian's files, the memory of the tragic Christmas Eve shooting from the previous year clicks into place. Across town, Playa is trying to enjoy a quiet, romantic evening with Venus, his girlfriend, listening to soft music. But the escalating chaos forces him to abruptly cancel his plans, ordering all his surviving soldiers to fall back to their main warehouse. Once Brian confirms that Playa has boxed himself and his men in, he throws on a long tactical coat. The final round has officially begun. Trailing the gang's convoy, Brian waits until they pull into the warehouse. Just before the heavy steel shutters can close, Brian rockets his car through the gap, breaching the compound with a massive crash. He steps out and unleashes pure hell on the first floor, ruthlessly gunning down every thug in his path as he fights his way toward the roof. To secure his six and block enemy reinforcements, he discreetly plants an explosive landmine on the stairs behind him. Following the sounds of movement, Brian suddenly comes face to face with Ruiz, who surprisingly survived their earlier encounter. Ruiz is a massive, towering brute, putting Brian at a severe physical disadvantage. But Brian's tactical genius shines through. Just as planned, the trailing gang members trigger the landmine. The massive explosion rocks the building, heavily distracting Ruiz. Brian capitalizes on the golden opportunity, flipping the script and launching a vicious counteroffensive. When Detective Dennis finally reaches the rooftop, he steps into an absolute slaughterhouse, covered in bodies. The detective jumps right into the bloody fray, handing out brutal beatdowns and taking out multiple gang members with elite professional strikes. By this point, Brian is running on fumes, his body riddled with fresh gunshot wounds. As he desperately checks his remaining ammo, Detective Dennis quietly approaches him. Time seems to stop as the two men lock eyes. Neither raises their weapon to fire. Brian is visibly terrified to drop his gun, but when Dennis looks at Brian's broken, bleeding body, he deeply feels the soul-crushing agony of a grieving father. Slowly and deliberately, the detective lowers his weapon. Without warning, the moment of peace is shattered as an overwhelming barrage of gunfire rains down on both of them. They're pinned down in a lethal crossfire, and both men take direct hits. Exchanging a quick, knowing glance, they split up to flank the shooters. Stepping out from the shadows, Brian is suddenly confronted by Venus, Playa's girlfriend, who turns around slowly, looking terrified and broken. Her tears trigger Brian's empathy, causing him to hesitate. But in this ruthless world, dropping his guard is a fatal mistake. His momentary compassion nearly gets him killed. The detective, struggling to stay on his feet, takes 2 more brutal shots to the body. Realizing that hesitation equals death, Brian makes the cold, necessary choice and guns her down. Clutching his blood-drenched pistol, Brian finally kicks open the door to Playa's room. When the final boss appears, Brian is literally knocking on death's door, lacking the strength to pull the trigger even one more time. Despite absorbing multiple bullets, he stands tall, flat out refusing to die at the feet of his sworn enemy. Playa aims his gun right at Brian's face, ready to pull the trigger and end it all. But in the final, breathless second, Detective Dennis fires a shot, hitting Playa, allowing Brian to lunge at the wounded gang leader with everything he has left, delivering the brutal, fatal blow that ends Playa's life once and for all. His bloody promise is fulfilled, his vengeance is finally complete, and the movie ends.
And that wraps up today's story. But what did you think of that ending? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, make sure to subscribe to Movie Recaps Hour, and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on the best movies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.